The Taliban says it's discussed turning a new page with the United States during face-to-face talks in Doha. The acting foreign minister, Amir Khan Muttaqi, who leads the Taliban delegation, says they've also discussed aid and getting COVID-19 vaccinations into Afghanistan. Before the meeting, the US said it was going to push the Taliban on issues, including evacuation flights and how it's guaranteeing the rights of women and girls and minorities. Security, of course, another big talking point, particularly the threat posed by ISIL in Afghanistan. The armed group's latest attack in a Shia mosque on Friday killed more than 60 people. We have two correspondents tracking this story. Shortly, we'll speak to Osama bin Javaid about what's been going on in Kabul in the lead-up to these talks. First, to Natasha Ghanem here in Doha. So, Natasha, what have they been talking about?
Well, I do want to note something that you just mentioned. The acting foreign minister, Maulvi Amir Khan Muttaqi, said, which is that these talks, in his view, represent the opening of a new page between Kabul and Washington. Bear in mind, these are once enemies on the battlefield, now representatives of governments sitting around a conference table. So this diplomatic dance begins. There's a chasm between the two sides that now somehow needs to be diplomatically bridged with concessions. The acting foreign minister said that the primary focus of the talks thus far were about the distribution of much-needed humanitarian aid. There is an evolving and deteriorating humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, and concern by the Americans that humanitarian aid is not being distributed smoothly. The acting foreign minister said that the Afghans will ensure that the aid is distributed. However, it did not make mention of the United States concerns that female aid workers are not being allowed to do their jobs unimpeded. Another topic of conversation, according to the foreign minister, was implementation of the Doha agreements. Here you have the Taliban once again, though, reminding the world and the United States that its sovereignty cannot be interfered with, that, quote, we don't want anyone to interfere in our internal affairs. The Taliban leaders came here with, for sure, money on their minds. They have asked the United States to lift sanctions and restrictions on the Afghan National Bank. In turn, the Afghan delegation says that it will work on paying government employees and providing services to the population. In turn, apparently the American delegation has pledged to provide COVID-19 vaccinations for Afghans. Now, one of the things that is surely a point of common ground between the two groups is this issue of security. Afghanistan is reeling from two major bombings in the last week that have killed dozens of people. And though publicly the Afghans have said that they will not work with the United States to help weaken ISIL in Afghanistan, clearly both sides want to provide some stability. And from the Americans' point of view, stability and money go hand in hand. The foreign minister said that that Afghanistan is aware that making the country stable is in the best interests of the international community, and it plans to do what it can to work towards that. The United States has said from the onset that this meeting, what it is a continuation of pragmatic, quote, engagement with the Taliban. And what it is not, from the American perspective, is recognition of the Taliban or conferring legitimacy. Those are direct quotes. So it'll be interesting to see where things go from here. But as is always the case, these types of things begin with an initial first meeting, and that's what we've had so far in Doha today.
Natasha, thanks very much. Live now to Kabul and our correspondent there, Osama bin Javaid. So, Osama, is it significant that when they were putting the delegation together, the embryonic Taliban administration, I guess they would say, we're going to become the government one day, pretty soon, they were putting names in the frame that weren't involved in the discussions in Doha before the Taliban takeover?
Well, it is an interesting transition for a movement which has been a fighting force for the last 2 decades to now change itself all of a sudden to a governing body. And this is what you're seeing in Doha now. Amir Khan Muttaqi, you see this statesman from a Taliban fighter, the evolution of this group into a government where at least they're trying to be. This is hugely significant because it is the first meeting where the Taliban interim government is interacting with the rest of the world, not on their soil. They have moved to Doha after long weeks of discussions. Earlier, we were talking to Taliban leaders who were telling us that there can be no negotiations until the United States fulfills its obligations that it had in writing committed with the Taliban in Doha. But then they moved from that and they wanted to go to Doha. There was a lot of shuttle diplomacy from the Qatari special envoy going to New York, going to Kabul, going to Doha, meeting people. And then in the lead up to this meeting, you saw the UN representative designated by the Taliban meeting not just ambassadors from the region, but international players as well. And Taliban saying that they are going to be talking to European Union leaders as well. So there is a lot that is at stake here for the Taliban, as you heard earlier, that they are there because they want to help the Afghan people. They just don't have the money. As you've been hearing the reports that as the former government went, it took all the money with them, and billions of dollars are now frozen for the Afghan the Afghan Central Bank as well. So of course, there is a myriad of problems that Afghanistan faces, economics being the first one. Because winter is approaching, millions of people are desperately in need of aid. And we've been seeing visits from the United Nations bodies, the World Health Organizations, Doctors Without Borders, everybody underlining the fact that the international community has probably weeks, not months, to act, and they cannot use the aid and the Afghan money that they've frozen as a bargaining chip to put Taliban into the shape that they want them to be.
Osama bin Javeed there in Kabul. Thanks, Osama. Talk to you later.